What if I told you that one of the greatest threats to human civilization isn't a war, a pandemic, or a natural disaster, but the quiet, personal decision that millions of people are making every single day to simply not have children? Welcome back to Peace by Design. Today we're going to talk about something deeply personal, deeply psychological, and deeply misunderstood. We're talking about why people born in the 1990s and beyond, millennials and Gen Z, are choosing not to have kids at rates the world has never seen before. And we're going to look honestly at what that means for the future of every society on Earth. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about something. This is not a video that shames people who don't want children. This is not a video that glorifies that decision either. This is a space where we look at the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, because that's the only way any of us can design a life of genuine peace. Let's start with the numbers, because they are impossible to ignore. In 1950, the average woman on Earth had around 5 children in her lifetime. By 2023, that number had dropped to less than 2.5 globally. But when you zoom in on high-income countries, the United States, South Korea, Japan, Germany, Italy, Spain, the picture becomes almost surreal. South Korea recorded a fertility rate of just 0.72 in 2023. That is the lowest ever measured in any country in recorded human history. In the United States, the rate sits around 1.6, and most of Western Europe, it's similar. The replacement rate, the number of children needed just to keep a population stable, is 2.1. Almost no developed country is hitting that number. And the trend is not reversing, it is accelerating. So the question is not whether this is happening, the question is why? And to answer that honestly, we have to stop looking at this as a political or demographic problem and start looking at it as a psychological one. The first thing we need to understand is that the generations born from the 1990s onward grew up in a fundamentally different psychological environment than every generation before them. Think about it. They were the first children raised in the age of mass media saturation, then the internet, then social media. They watched the 2008 financial crisis devastate their parents' stability. During their most formative years, they entered the job market carrying record levels of student debt. They watched housing prices spiral so far out of reach that home ownership, something previous generations saw as a basic milestone, became a distant fantasy for millions of them. And then, just as they were hitting the age when people typically start thinking about family, a global pandemic locked them indoors for 2 years and reminded them viscerally how fragile everything is. The psychologist Abraham Maslow built his famous hierarchy of needs on a foundational principle. Human beings cannot thrive at higher levels of development until their basic needs are secured: safety, stability, shelter, financial security. When those foundations feel uncertain, and for a huge portion of millennials and Gen Z, they do, the instinct to create new life diminishes. It's not selfishness. It's survival psychology. The brain does not want to bring new life into conditions it perceives as unstable, but that's only part of the story. The second layer is about identity and meaning. Previous generations largely built their sense of self around family. Being a parent was not just a life choice, it was the central life script. It was expected. It was what you did. There were very few alternative narratives available, especially for women. Your worth was deeply entangled with your fertility and your role as a caregiver. Generation Y and Generation Z grew up in a world where that script was being rewritten in real time. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers. Higher education became the new normal. Travel, entrepreneurship, creative careers, personal development. Entire cultures formed around lives that didn't require a family at the center. And social media, for all its damage, did something genuinely significant here. It made alternative lifestyles visible and aspirational, in a way they had never been before. For the first time in history, young people could see thousands of living examples of adults who were happy, fulfilled, and child-free. When you expand the menu, fewer people order the same dish. And then there's the climate dimension, which we cannot skip. Multiple studies have found that eco-anxiety, a deep, chronic fear about the future of the planet, is one of the top reasons younger generations cite for not wanting to have children. A 2021 survey of 10,000 young people across 10 countries found that more than half were either hesitant to have children or had decided against it because of climate change. This is not just idealism or politics, this is grief. This is a generation that grew up watching wildfires, hurricanes, and species extinction on a loop, and internalized a genuinely terrifying question. Is it ethical to bring a new human being into a world that might be uninhabitable by the time they're grown? That question is a form of psychological trauma, and it's shaping reproductive decisions at a population-wide scale. Then there's the economic reality, which is both a practical barrier and a psychological one. The cost of raising a child in the United States from birth to age 17 is now estimated at over $300,000. And that doesn't include college. Housing costs in major cities have become so extreme that couples in their 30s are still renting small apartments without the space or financial margin they feel they need. To responsibly raise a child, childcare costs in many countries now rival or exceed a full salary. The math simply doesn't work for a growing number of people. And here's the psychological piece that often gets missed. It's not just the actual cost, it's the perceived risk. When people feel financially precarious, even if they're objectively stable by historical standards, they don't feel safe enough to take on the enormous responsibility of another life. Perception drives behavior more powerfully than reality. And then there's the relationship dimension. Marriage rates are also in sharp decline. More people are staying single longer or opting out of traditional partnership structures entirely. The rise of individualism, which is not inherently bad, has made people less willing to compromise their autonomy, their lifestyle, and their personal freedom for the sake of family formation. The therapist Esther Perel has written extensively about how modern relationships carry a weight that no relationship structure in history has ever carried. We expect our partner to be our best friend, our therapist, our intellectual equal, our co-parent, our passion, and our stability, all at once. That is an enormous and often impossible burden. And when relationships fracture under that weight, the desire for children often fractures with it. Now, this is where the conversation gets truly serious. What does all of this mean for the future? Because here is the part that most people haven't fully reckoned with yet. A shrinking population sounds peaceful. Fewer people, less pressure on resources, less crowding. But the economic and social reality of demographic collapse is anything but peaceful. Here's why. Every modern economy is built on a generational pyramid. Young, working-age people pay taxes that fund the pensions, healthcare, and social services of the elderly. When that pyramid inverts, when there are more elderly people than working-age people, the entire system comes under catastrophic strain. Japan is already living this. Italy is heading there. South Korea is approaching a crisis of such magnitude that their government has spent billions on pro-natalist policies and seen almost no effect. In the next 30 to 50 years, countries that do not maintain population stability will face simultaneous labor shortages, pension crises, collapsing healthcare systems, and declining economic output. The tax base shrinks. The burden on each working person grows. The quality of public services deteriorates. And in a cruel irony, the social safety nets that would make young people feel secure enough to have children in the first place begin to erode. Immigration can offset some of this. And in many countries it does. But immigration brings its own political and social tensions, as we have seen across Europe and the United States. And it does not fully solve the structural problem, because the countries that produce the most migrants are themselves now experiencing rapidly falling fertility rates. There's also a less discussed consequence, which is cultural and psychological. When a society ages, it changes in character. Risk tolerance decreases, innovation slows. The energy of youth, the idealism, the willingness to question, to experiment, to challenge, diminishes. A society of older people tends toward conservation, rather than transformation. And at a time when the world desperately needs new ideas, new energy, and new solutions, demographic aging may quietly drain the very wellspring that those solutions come from. None of this means that people choosing not to have children are wrong. Let me be very clear about that. Many of the reasons people are making this choice are entirely rational responses to entirely real conditions. The financial pressure is real. The climate fear is rational. The desire for autonomy is legitimate. The disillusionment with institutions that failed their generation is earned. But we do need to ask collectively what kind of world we are building, because the same forces driving this decline. Financial instability, housing inaccessibility, inadequate parental support, ecological anxiety, the erosion of community are also driving the mental health crisis, the loneliness epidemic, and the profound sense of meaninglessness that so many young people carry. These are not separate problems. They're symptoms of the same underlying wound. And this is where peace by design comes back to its core mission. Because peace, genuine, sustainable, structural peace, requires designing the conditions in which human beings can flourish. Not just survive, not just scroll, not just consume, but actually flourish, build, create, connect. And yes, for those who want to raise the next generation with confidence and love rather than fear and scarcity, the decision to have or not have children is one of the most intimate personal decisions a human being can make. It should never be made under duress. It should never be made because of economic fear or systemic failure, or a world that hasn't done its job of making people feel safe and supported. The birth rate is not just a demographic number. It is a referendum on hope. It is a signal from an entire generation about how they feel about the future. Right now, for millions of people, that signal is saying, we're not sure the future is safe enough to bring someone new into it. The question for all of us, as individuals, as communities, as societies, is whether we are willing to build a world that changes that answer. Because when people feel safe, supported, loved, and hopeful, they do extraordinary things. And it is something worth designing for. Thank you for being here. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment below. I genuinely want to know what you think. Are you part of a generation wrestling with this decision? What does this topic stir up for you? I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself.